Awesome.
Thanks.
So, as Carter mentioned, my name is Jayzona Alberto, and I'm one of the academic managers at the College of Dental Medicine at Western University of Health Sciences, located in Pomona, California. First off, I just want to thank you all for logging in and attending my webinar today. I hope you take away something valuable from the lessons we learned at Western U and how we implemented rubrics at our institution. Before I begin, though, I wanted to give you a brief history of the use of the rubrics feature in Examsoft at our institution. First off, like many schools, we are continuously revising and improving our forms of assessment, and our rubrics are no different. For this reason, Examsoft is a good platform for our performance-based assessments because it's fairly simple and quick to input the rubrics, and albeit there are a few kinks here and there that as a college we need to work around, the feature provides a nice grading experience for all of our faculty members. We started beta testing the new rubrics feature in Examsoft in early spring 2014. I want to say around March or maybe a little bit earlier than that. We set up a few rubrics for some low-stake assessments, and then we scheduled some training sessions for only the faculty members who were grading those assessments, and then the staff members provided some technical support during those assessments to the faculty. We gathered feedback from the faculty graders on their experience, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, and provided it to our account managers over at Examsoft. Overall, the rubrics feature was the solution to many of our assessment challenges. It was and is still not an easy implementation process, but as we move forward, the future does look very promising, and we are hopeful that with the new updates, Examsoft will provide a truly robust platform for performance grading. So today I have four topics that I'm going to kind of touch on a little bit. Um, these four topics were really important to our implementation process, and my hope is that something I share with you today can help you with yours. So first off is faculty buy-in and training, which is key for any implementation of any kind of platform, like grading platform. And so if the faculty members can see and understand the value of using Examsoft for rubric grading, then you can have successful outcomes just like us. So more importantly, faculty members who find the platform easy and user-friendly are more likely to promote its use and then also encourage their colleagues and then reap the benefits of the platform itself. Secondly, we have used the rubrics feature in so many different ways, and we're about to embark on yet another innovative method of grading using with our clinical exams. And I can guarantee that if you have an out-of-the-box assessment you need to grade, you can probably create a rubric for it and grade it through Examsoft. Then third is, what is the value of rubric reports and data when you pull it from Examsoft? So the value is truly priceless because these reports and data can be used in several ways. For example, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we can pull the reports and the data and submit them to accreditation bodies. And then finally, a significant aspect of the rubric implementation process at our institution is the willingness and ability to overcome obstacles to reach our assessment goals. You may ask yourself, why do we even have obstacles? Well, the Examsoft platform is great and for very general use of rubrics, but at our institution, we have specific needs and Examsoft might not always fit the bill. But that's why we do these trials and we play around with the system or even change our processes. We offer our feedback and suggestions for improvement to Examsoft team and hope it's something they'll put on a ticket for a future update. Nevertheless, we continue to use the system because it fulfills a majority of our assessment needs. So that's a little bit of an overview for this webinar, but please feel free to ask questions by typing them in the chat box as Carter mentioned so that I can try my best to answer them at the end of the presentation. So what kinds of performance-based assessments can be inputted into Examsoft? Well, practically anything. These are a few of the assessments that currently have rubrics and either have already been graded in Examsoft or will be in the near future. Our clinical exams are a major component of our curriculum, especially in the third and fourth year. We also have OSCEs, which are another assessment where students are better prepared for these kind of exams. We have homework assignments and essays that have been uploaded as artifacts into Examsoft. We currently have a faculty member who will be grading various multimedia projects using Examsoft rubrics, and that's something I'll talk a little bit more in detail later. And then we have the group projects and presentations, which are really easy when using the group grading feature within the Examsoft system. And then we have yet to test out the self-assessments, but we have assigned students as graders for their group mates in peer-to-peer assessments, and that actually has worked out very nicely. So instant gratification. Um, so for our school, these are the top 5 reasons why Examsoft rubrics offer an instant value. So paper copies are eliminated, and in the past, we've had to actually make copies for every single student and make sure that the copies aren't lost, and that's just so much of a hassle having to track the paper rubrics and scanning them in to make sure that we have them on file like electronically, and then even filing them ourselves. So that's completely eliminated with the Examsoft rubrics. There's less chance of miscalculations due to human error. And prior to implementing the Examsoft rubrics, we actually had to manually calculate all of the rubrics, and that's just, like a disaster waiting to happen. Like if you miscalculate a student's rubric when you're averaging 2 scores, then there's always that chance of getting their grade wrong, and so that eliminates it with this with Examsoft rubrics. And then the quick reporting of scores is just something that is a godsend basically, because we can finish the assessment. The faculty graders just let us know when they're done grading all of their students, and then we pull the reports almost instantly. And so that's a very nice feature that we can provide those reports at least like maybe 5 or 10 minutes right after they're done grading. And then another thing is releasing the reports to the rubrics to the students and having their scores and the dimensions that were selected for their scores, as well as the faculty grader comments. And so they have that in their Examsoft portal, which they can print, or which they can just view right after the assessment is released, right after the rubric is released to them. And then finally, rubric creation. We found that much of the time, it's only taken us under 10 minutes to create the rubric in Examsoft, and that's a nice feature. Instead of having to create a rubric an Excel spreadsheet and then convert it to a PDF and then print it, that eliminates a lot of our the back end work of it. And so having it in Examsoft is really easy. So the rubric creation takes under 10 minutes, and then when you're creating it into an assessment, it's another 5 minutes. So total time taken to do this task is probably around 15 to 20 minutes. So before or even during you begin implementing Examsoft rubrics at your institution, you may want to consider doing one or all of these things to enhance your process. So establish long-term goals. Your program or college needs to ask the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. Who will benefit from using the rubrics? What can you get out of implementing this? When do you envision having the rubrics up and running? Where do you see this process in the future? 1 year from now, 5 years from now, etc. And why is this important to your program? Also, you need to have a clear vision of what you need. This may involve discussing your goals and vision for rubrics grading with administration, faculty members, staff, and any other person who manages grades. Consider what types of reports you want to generate, what trends you are looking for, and other points of discussion of that nature. Develop an implementation process. So this is basically just laying out a plan for inputting rubrics, training the graders, pulling the reports, and all of the back-end work that goes into this process that you're starting at your institution. Understand that there will be hurdles. As I mentioned, we had experienced a few roadblocks, but nothing too monumental. Each time we approached an obstacle, we worked as a team to brainstorm ideas for getting around that. And then, this leads me to the last bullet: prepare for challenges. A new process like electronic rubric grading may come with a few hiccups, but always strategize with a backup plan. Many of our assessments are so fast-paced that there may be no time to troubleshoot an Examsoft issue. But if you do have a backup plan, you can always go back to the grades after the assessment and adjust the scores accordingly. So goal setting. There are four things I would recommend when you're setting your goals. And the first is to determine the types of reports you want to generate. So are you looking for item analysis? Are you wanting to look at the report for the categories? Are you trying to pull some summary reports, the exam taker reports? The detailed grader reports are actually my favorite reports because you can see exactly what each grader gave to each student and in each dimension. And so that's kind of nice to provide that to upper administration or even as a faculty member to see how or even as a course director to see how your faculty members are grading the students and if there's calibration between those grades. And then finally, longitudinal reports, which is good to look at over maybe like a semester or over a year or even over a period, the 4 years that the students are in the program, like at our school, at our College of Dental Medicine. So you want to also create a timeline for implementation. So our timeline has been kind of variable because we have small timelines and then we have a larger timeline of implementing the rubrics as a whole. The first 6 months of 2014, we were just beta testing and then seeing how we would implement this and kind of coming up with ideas on how to make rubrics work for us at our school. And then now that it's been almost a year, we've been more accustomed to putting the rubrics into Examsoft and to having scheduling faculty training sessions and then also just doing minor assessments with Examsoft rubrics. And so probably in the next 6 months, we'll see how our timeline is going and we'll probably reevaluate from there. And then assigning roles or tasks, just having staff members know what their duties are for Examsoft rubrics, and then also having the faculty know how to grade. Um, this is different for every college and for every program, but at our institution, our staff is the one who really inputs the rubrics and sets all the faculty grader accounts up and everything in regards to the Examsoft part. And then our faculty graders, they just simply grade. And that's something that works for our system. So just determine what works for your college and like how your workflow is at your institution. And then start small and then go big. So for us, we try beta testing with a small group of faculty so that the faculty in that group can go off and teach other faculty how to grade and then implement it college-wide. So I'll talk a little bit more about this, but we're currently beta testing the use of Examsoft rubrics with our clinical exams for the remainder of this semester, which is just a couple weeks. And so that's a small group of probably 12 faculty members, and then it's going to go, we're going to go big in the next semester. So spring 2015, we'll have probably around 40 faculty members start grading clinical exams in Examsoft rubrics. So timeline and roles. As I mentioned, set deadlines. We recently had a tight deadline of a week to input 7 rubrics, create faculty user accounts for about 30 faculty members, prepare a faculty training. We actually held 2 faculty training sessions, and then set up folders in Examsoft and then other miscellaneous tasks that our staff needed to do. And so we actually met all of our deadlines, and that was no surprise because with Examsoft, it's very easy to do all of these things, and it only actually took us, instead of having to do it within a week, it actually took us maybe 4 days. And so that's something that, you know, like having those deadlines and making sure that you meet those deadlines and that your staff members and your faculty members meet those deadlines is pretty key for moving the process along. Also, assigning roles to staff members, as I mentioned, we had all these different tasks that needed to be done. And so just dividing and conquering. So we assigned roles to the staff, or some of them just volunteered for each task, and then they split up their tasks. So everyone had an opportunity to input one rubric, so they can experience doing that. And then they were also taught how to assign students to graders. And then the staff members were also present at the faculty training session so that they could provide support to the faculty who were new to using Examsoft rubrics. After the assessment was complete, one of the staff members pulled the reports and sent it to the course directors. So it was a nice little start to finish with one of these assessments. And then obviously at the end of every assessment, you can reevaluate the roles and the deadlines. And then for the next assessment, you can probably reassign the roles and the tasks to the staff members so that everyone has an opportunity to become comfortable with the various parts of Examsoft that they need to really know. And so faculty buy-in, some of the advantages, sometimes explaining the advantages of Examsoft rubrics is essential in getting the faculty to really want to use the rubrics, because it might be a bit of a push, especially for those faculty members who aren't technologically savvy. And so some of the advantages we usually tell our faculty is that Examsoft is easy to use on tablets, on laptops, on desktops. We've even had faculty grade on their iPhones. They can access the rubrics from any location on and off campus. So we have a lot of faculty who are offsite or who work from home or who bring their work home with them. So for them to be able to just go log into Examsoft and grade there, that takes up that eliminates a lot of their time at school. Um, and then also another benefit that we always tell them is that they won't misplace the paper rubrics or copies just because it's all online. And so since it's on this central online location, they can see what they scored their students and if, they want to just adjust grades or clear grading or anything like that. So then we also tell them about the value of pulling the reports. So they can look at relationships of tag categories, and then they can also see how students perform in program and institutional learning outcomes. We can, as I mentioned before, pull reports longitudinally for students, both as a cohort and on an individual basis. And this is something I'll discuss a little bit later too. And then finally, the longitudinal reports can be combined between the rubrics and the written assessment based on the tag categories. And then with Examsoft rubrics, we've been more consistent in tagging our institutional learning outcomes and our program learning outcomes. We've also been consistent in having a set procedure and process for inputting rubrics and for grading. And then since there are so many arms of the curriculum at our college, there's preclinical, clinical, community, and biomedical sciences. Examsoft provides a centralized location for the faculty to grade. So that's something that we always encourage them in any arm of the curriculum to use Examsoft rubrics so that it's all in one place. So our experience with faculty training with Examsoft rubrics has been really interesting. I think we found that small groups are always better. And we usually break it up based on either the type of assessment, like if there's an upcoming assessment that involves multiple graders, then we have the faculty come in, all the faculty grading, and we kind of show them how they're going to be grading in Examsoft. So either the type of assessment or the arm of the curriculum. So like I mentioned, we recently had 12 clinical faculty come in and we taught them how to use Examsoft rubrics. We encourage the faculty members to bring their laptops or their tablets or other mobile devices. At our college, we do have iPad minis that the faculty members can check out when they grade, but many prefer just to bring their own because they already know how to use it and it's just easier for them. For those who don't have the mobile devices, they typically grade on their desktop, and many of them just really like it because they think it's easier to use than the iPads, having to touch the screen and everything. And then we also offer the faculty members technical support, especially during more complex assessments like OSCEs or modules, when there are multiple faculty graders simultaneously grading groups of students. Finally, we create these step-by-step guides that we use during our training sessions, and they're just really simple and straightforward. We explain the process from start to finish, and we send them the guides after the training so that they can refer to them if they need to. So this is just a sample of our faculty training guide from last week. We trained two groups of clinical faculty, as I mentioned. There were about 5 faculty members in each group, and we had at least 3 staff members present to provide individual help during the training. We allotted the training to be an hour long, but it actually only took us 40 minutes. Many of them had really valuable comments and feedback that helped us revise and improve our process for on our staff's end. After the training, we sent these guides to them via email, but it's basically just screenshots of what they have to do in order to reach the rubric. And our process for the clinical exams was something that we had to create. So that's something I'll kind of explain a little bit later. But they receive an email from us letting them know that the rubric is available for them to grade, and it's just a process that we started on our end, and then it goes into the Examsoft portal. So innovative uses with rubrics. 2 examples of our most innovative uses of the rubrics feature are the mock board exams and community service learning projects. So before I explain these two, on the right-hand side is just a picture of our iPad mini on one of the Examsoft rubrics that we used last week. And so it's just very clean and very easy to use. And so this is why most of our faculty actually use the iPads in the clinic. And so we used our rubrics to grade our mock board exams during the beta testing phase for Examsoft and a time when multiple graders did not exist. Because it was our very first venture in rubric grading in the clinic, we did not know what to expect, but luckily we came up with a plan to create a standard faculty account that all of our faculty graders can log into. We then created 2 separate assessments because there were 2 graders per student, and then the assessment took roughly 4 hours and still needed to be finished grading over the next few days. Overall, it went surprisingly well, and we had very positive feedback from the faculty graders, as well as some suggestions to pass on to Examsoft, many of which were included in future updates. So that's kind of cool that Examsoft had taken our suggestions and had actually implemented it into the next phase of the rubrics feature. And then the grading of the community-based projects is currently happening. This is our first attempt at artifact grading, so it's very exciting for us. The students have been placed in groups, so it's basically a group grade. Then they then decide that whether they want to create a song, a video, a board game, a flip book, or a pamphlet. They're told to upload their project to Examsoft, and one faculty member will grade the project. And then it's just going to be really exciting for us to hear about that faculty member's experience with artifact grading, and so that she can encourage others to use this feature for essays and other artifacts in the near future. As I've mentioned, we can use Examsoft rubrics in all areas of the curriculum. We are currently using it in 3 of the 4 arms of our curriculum, so preclinical, clinical, and community. There may be some opportunities for us to use rubric grading in biomedical sciences very soon, so hopefully we'll see that in the spring 2015. Ability to log in and grade students from any location, as I mentioned. Faculty can grade from home without the fear of losing the paper rubric or any student assignments. So Examsoft rubrics also streamline the grading process across the college. So there's going to be just one method of grading rubrics, and it's going to be Examsoft. And then just having that one central location for faculty members to grade, release the rubrics and their scores to the students in the Examsoft portals. So our examples, one of our examples is for the group projects is an oral presentation that practice management students give in their 3rd years. and they give the presentation as a group. There are two faculty graders who enter scores for each group that after they present. So this has been fairly easy. We just assign all of the students to the two graders. It Examsoft averages out the scores, and when we pull the reports, it's already the raw score that we're going to give the students. And then, as I mentioned, we began artifact grading with these various artifacts. So students will upload links to a song and a video to Examsoft, and then they'll also upload artifacts such as a pamphlet, a handbook for the game that the board game that they're creating, and then also the PDF of the flip book that they're making. And then finally, the team participation rubric. We set up group grading for students to evaluate their peers during group work, and this correlates to the practice management presentations, which were given in groups. This actually took me quite some time to set up, so it took me about an hour and a half to assign every student their group mates, because you have to go in individually to each individual student and assign them the three other people in their group. And but it wasn't that, it wasn't that bad, but the reports are just much more clean than doing it via Google Docs, because we used to do it through Google Docs, or we used to collect paper rubrics that they would just drop off in a Dropbox, and many of them just got lost, and it was just kind of a headache. And then on the right-hand side, that's just a picture of one of our faculty members, our clinical faculty. And he, if you can see, he's holding an iPad in his left hand, in his left arm, and he's grading two students during an oral diagnosis module. And then our clinical exam grading in Examsoft, as I mentioned, is something new that will begin next semester. Because there's currently no on-the-fly grading, we developed a new process for assigning faculty graders to students who are challenging clinical exams. For us, the students will submit a form in SharePoint that lets staff know who the two faculty graders are and when their clinical exam will take place. The staff will then get the notification almost immediately and then assign the graders in Examsoft to that clinical exam and to that student. The staff member will then complete the workflow and send an automatically generated email to the grader that they can begin grading. And then another type of rubric grading we recently completed was an oral diagnosis module. Faculty graders were assigned a group of students to observe during this module. The rubric was a 2-column, 15-dimension rubric, and it was basically a checklist of whether the student demonstrated an action or not. And then the most challenging part of this module was that some groups had finished early, so we needed some of the faculty graders to log into other accounts so that it would help the module move along faster. In the end, the data was extracted very nicely, and we had only one minor issue when a grader forgot to save a student's score. At our college, we continue to improve our tagging of categories so that we can view the performance in a particular learning outcome. We provide our faculty members with the categories, and they select the appropriate ones for that dimension. And then we do this by creating a drop-down within an Excel spreadsheet so that it's simple and quick for them to just submit the tags to us. And so then from those tag categories, we generate the reports, and then we can compare students, or we can compare categories, or we can look where we need to improve our assessments. As many of you know, one of the major goals of assessment is being able to generate meaningful data and reports. Much of the data through Examsoft can be formulated into reports to give for accreditation purposes or institutional outcomes assessment. Something I found interesting is being able to compare students in a cohort and also looking at a student individually to see where he or she excels or shows some weakness. Because the reports illustrate what areas the student performs poorly, there are many opportunities for faculty members to intervene and provide support to that student. In addition, faculty members can see whether they need to make improvements to a rubric or a dimension of that rubric, especially if a large majority of the students within a cohort perform poorly. So here's just an example of what I just spoke about. So if student A consistently performs poorly performs poorly on the tag category of communication, which is a soft skill, we can see what the issue is. A faculty member or an advisor can determine or address the cause of the problem. Um, like maybe they can talk to the student and ask if he or she is nervous, is anxious, or perhaps maybe has some self-confidence issues, and then they can help them work through it. So they can offer them additional training or support or for that student so he or she can improve their communication skills. And a soft skill like communication is never really caught on written assessments because, a student can answer a multiple choice question correctly that is tagged communication. But when a faculty member sees that the student can't communicate proper or can't communicate appropriately with a patient, then that's something, that's an issue that they need to address so that that student can be a better dentist. And so then we can also pull longitudinal trends, and this is just something that we can see how well a student performs over a period of time. So typically we can try to look at how well the student performed during this semester, especially with specific tag categories. And then also over a year, so their first year, how well they did, and then overall their 4 years in the program. And as I talked about previously, in Examsoft, you can combine the longitudinal reports for written assessments with the performance-based assessments. And those are based on the tag categories. So these are just a few of the challenges we faced in the past year with the rubrics, but most of these are we found solutions to. But first off, on the fly grading. So in our institution, multiple faculty members grade spontaneously, and so it would be nice just to have an app similar to like the soft test app where the faculty can just log into their account and then just have select a rubric, select a student, and grade. And right now, we're currently having to assign the graders to the students. And so that's something we would just want to eliminate that middle step. But right now, it's still working. Right now, it's working for us. So that's just something that we hope would, come to fruition in the future. And then we had some issues with the rubric points, and that was just basically us needing to learn how to adjust the points so it worked for us because we had a rubric that had 3.5 in the middle of the in the middle column, and that's just something that we ended up finding out that we could fix. And then finally, we provided those improvement suggestions to our Examsoft account managers. And so these are our solutions. So with the clinical exam, since we don't have the on-the-fly grading, we revise the process for students to challenge clinical exams. So I spoke about it earlier, but now they have to submit a form through SharePoint, and they just have to let us know what clinical exams they're going to challenge, who are their two faculty graders, and then someone on the staff will assign that to them, assign the student to the two faculty graders. And then for the points adjustments, we just ended up doubling all the points for that particular rubric. Um, and then when we posted the rubric as an assessment, we posted it out of the total points for the rubric. And so it ended up working out. And when we were able to grade the rubric, the middle column, it just happened to um, total out to 3.5. And so that's exactly what we needed. And so just a little tinkering with the system helped us, find the solution for that problem. And then we have a power users group with which Carter had mentioned. Patty Cumbreros and I had spoken about this in a previous webinar, and in our power users group, we kind of discuss options and we share ideas about how to use rubrics. And it's really nice to have that group at our institution because we can support each other. And I've definitely tried to reach out to some of the other colleges when they're implementing rubrics and seeing if I can help in any way. And so that's nice to have other users at our campus to discuss some of these things. And then the last two things, as I mentioned, is contacting our Examsoft account managers to put in tickets for some improvements or some glitches that we see when we use the rubrics feature. And then they've also recommended to us to post to the Examsoft community board, which we do. And it's really nice because you see what other institutions um, across the country what they kind of want too. So a lot of them have also liked some of my posts and said, "Oh yeah, we want that too." So it's nice to see that we're not the only institution asking for some of these things. But that's all I have for you today. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but yeah.
Thank you. We certainly have a handful of questions here. Um,
Okay.
and I'm not sure where to start. So why don't we go with this? Um, can you do team-based learning using the system that you have just described here?
Team-based learning. Well,
Yeah. Are
uh,
you familiar with team-based learning?
like group work.
So the person that asked the question actually gave a good definition of it here. It's a
Oh,
TBL assessment requires the individual student to take the test initially, and then retake it with a small group of their peers.
Oh, actually, we don't really do that at our institution, but I would think that you would be able to use the rubrics feature for something like that if it's based on a performance, but or like if it's an essay or an artifact that the student writes, or is it just a an assessment that there isn't multiple choice, or I think it depends on the assessment that they're giving for this team-based learning. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that was by far the most difficult question, so that's why I did it first. If the viewer who asked that question could give a little bit of an update, that would be awesome. Um, and actually, he did mention that it's a multiple choice question. I'm looking at a definition of it right now that says, it dramatically shifts the focus of classroom time from conveying course concepts by the instructor to application of course concepts by student teams. In the TBL process, students acquire their initial exposure to the content through readings and are held accountable for their preparation using a readiness assurance process. Following the readiness assurance process, class time is used to practice applying content in a series of team application exercises.
Okay, well, I think if there are faculty graders who are willing or who will grade after the students have, completed all of this, I think that's when you can implement the rubrics. But if it's a multiple choice exam, I don't think, well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Carter, but I don't think Examsoft supports rubric grading with multiple choice questions.
You can do it separately, but you would need two different assessments in Examsoft. You would have the assessment that had the multiple choice, and then the assessment that had the rubric, and then you could combine those. Um, yeah. Okay, so I see that this person is actually giving a little bit more feedback now, so let's move on to another question, then we'll come back around to it.
Okay.
And I know you answered this in the presentation, but just to reinforce it, do rubrics and Examsoft live in the cloud?
Yeah, it does because it's online based, so you can log in from anywhere and create a rubric or grade a rubric. Like I've definitely created rubrics on like from home, but I also do it at work. So does that answer the
Perfect.
question? Okay.
Yeah, I think that definitely answers the question. That was kind of a yes or no. Okay, so next question. Can faculty make comments to students within the rubric system?
Yes, so there are options for faculty members to make comments per dimension, so per each row, or they can make an overall comments for the entire rubric in general. And so those are also like you can decide whether or not you want to release those comments to the students or not, or just have them for your personal knowledge.
Perfect, thank you. And do those comments always have to appear to students, or do they sometimes just appear to other faculty members?
Like I said, you could decide to release those to the students or not. And if you want to just keep them for yourself, then that's okay too. We usually just release them to the students.
Perfect. So this is something I've heard from multiple people actually. So how do you align clinical faculty to grading practices? If these are faculty members who are never actually on site at your institution, but quote unquote live elsewhere on the clinical sites, how do you ever get them all together to kind of align them to how they're going to use this rubric for grading?
So, what's interesting about the College of Dental Medicine at Western University is we have a dental clinic on campus. So our clinical faculty actually are on site. They're just in a different building, and so they have an hour before their day begins. The clinic opens at 9, so between 8 and 9, they have that hour to come in, and that's when we hold our training sessions. We do have community-based clinics, and what happens is there's usually a full-time faculty member from our college who goes to those clinics. And in my experience, it feels like we will have that faculty member trained, and then that person will go ahead and train the faculty members offsite. And so I think that's probably the best way to approach something like that if that's how your institution is set up. If not, I don't know if you have, we always have these like faculty and staff development days kind of spread out throughout our school calendar. And so those are definitely good opportunities to train the faculty in Examsoft rubrics, especially those who are off campus.
Perfect, thank you. So two questions kind of dealing with faculty development then. About how many hours of faculty development would you suggest to allot to train faculty in how to use the system? And I don't believe that you guys have the faculty making their own rubrics, but how many more hours would you say you might need to train them in how to make their own rubrics?
Okay, so that question is actually kind of tricky because I think it depends on the faculty members you're training, first off. For us, like a lot of our faculty members are very technologically savvy, so they kind of are very familiar with using like an iPad or going into Examsoft and grading essays like before. But we do have or some faculty members who like they require a little more attention. And so it usually takes about an hour to train the faculty members. And as I said, we usually do it in small groups because I think that's how they learn better. And then we always have at least two or more staff members present to provide that individualized support for them. So if there's like five or if there's six faculty members in a training session like we did last week, we had three um, staff members. So one staff member per two faculty members. And so the staff member would just go back and forth between the two. I honestly don't believe it would take that long to train faculty on just grading because it's really a matter of like 4 clicks into the system and then you're at the rubric. Um, and then from there, just training them on how to click on the boxes in the rubric. And so it's pretty I think people can just kind of figure it out themselves. So I would allot maybe an hour and a half for faculty training of grading. For inputting rubrics into the system, at our institution, we do have the staff do it ourselves, so that's just how our college works. But I think any faculty member can definitely input the rubrics in themselves. There's a lot of tutorials on examsoft.com. They have like QRG guides, quick reference guides online that we've used to figure out how to input the rubrics. So if you want to train faculty on inputting rubrics, I would say probably an hour or two. And if you're doing it in a large group, maybe a little longer so that you can kind of see how everyone does it, like kind of watch how they're doing it and make sure that they're doing it correctly. But it actually is very simple. So once they get the hang of it, it'll probably only take them 15 minutes total just to input the rubric. So it's a really good system, and I think it's really quick and easy and user friendly.
Thank you. So next question kind of spins off of that one. Do the same question, but talk about reporting. So how many hours of professional development would you suggest to allot to train faculty in how to run reports?
Oh, wow. Running reports is actually really easy. So basically, if you want a detailed grader report, which is a snapshot of what all of the graders graded, all of the students for row, um, every row in the rubric, it's just a matter of clicking a button that says detailed grader report in the grade tab of the assessment. And so that's really it. It runs it pulls out as a CSV file, and then you could just save it however you want to. And then for the other reports like exam taker reports and summary reports, those are also very simple. It's just basically click of like three clicks to pull the report. um, for exam taker for exam taker scores, you would have to Examsoft would take you to a page where you select the fields that you want to pull from it, and then that's all you do. You just pull it out as you can pull out as a PDF, a CSV, or any other kind of Excel spreadsheet. And so that's very simple. I think well, personally, the most complicated report is the longitudinal report. And you would just have to go to the tab for longitudinal reports on Examsoft. And there's three steps basically, and it's like laid out in boxes, and it just asks you like what kind of or what assessments you want to pull from, what categories, what time period, what students, and you just answer those questions, and then that'll pull the report basically. So it's not too bad, and there are these little buttons that appear on Examsoft that's like actually really nice that I just found out about. But I guess it's kind of like a tutorial, so it'll kind of tell you and show you as you go. So it's kind of nice. So it's like actually really nice. But yeah.
Awesome. Are you aware of any disadvantages of using rubrics? Maybe considering from a student perspective, like they might think that it could be restrictive, especially when it comes to grading essays. Have you heard about anything like that from students?
Um, in all honesty, I don't think our students have had that much opinion. They haven't given us like any really real feedback on like the rubrics. Um, they've they've I think we've had a few problems when they could see the rubric and they couldn't grade, but the students couldn't grade each other. So that was like one of the peer to peers. But it was resolved in a couple hours, and that was basically the only disadvantage we heard from them. I would think as a student who I graduated like last year, and so I don't think I could see any disadvantages. My only thing would be I would be kind of concerned about the security, but because our faculty use their own iPads or their own laptops, like that's the only thing. Like, you wouldn't lend out your iPad to someone, or a faculty member shouldn't at least. Um, yeah, that would be my only concern for student as a student, but other than that, I don't see any other disadvantages because they can just get the rubrics right away on Examsoft. I think they probably see that it's more beneficial to them because sometimes faculty members misplace their paper rubrics, or not even faculty members, but them themselves, and so that fear of losing track of their grades, I think, is why they think this is a beneficial system.
Perfect. I'll just go ahead and toss an answer out there myself also. I used to teach English at Texas State University, and I always let my students see the grading rubric that I was going to use for their essays before they wrote their essays. So whenever I gave them the assignment, I would also give them the rubric. That way they understood exactly what they were going to be evaluated on. And they always thought that rubrics were really helpful because then um, they could make sure that they were covering all their bases so they could get the highest points possible while they were constructing their essays. Now, I know that my experience is vastly different from Jayzona's and just the way that we were using rubrics, and I wasn't using Examsoft rubrics. Mine were printed out on paper like Word documents, and then I would circle the cell that they matched. But the students always really appreciated being able to know beforehand what they were going to be assessed on. Jayzona, do you release the rubrics to the students before the assessment happens? That way they kind of have the same knowledge?
Yeah, we always do. So we release them via Examsoft, and then we also post them on SharePoint, which is like the like location where the students get like PowerPoints and things like that. So it's in two different places. There was one time when we didn't release the rubric because I think someone just forgot, and that was kind of a mess, but we'll never forget again.
Understandable. I will say that I did have a couple of times where I would give the students the rubric along with their assignment. That way they would know what they were going to be assessed on. And then in class, we would discuss the rubric and sometimes even make changes to it right then and there. Now, that wasn't a formalized process, but if the question arose, then I would address it in class, and then if the need was there to change it, as long as it wasn't one of the cells that the department had prescribed for me to use, then sometimes I would go ahead and change it right there, right then and there in class, based on what the consensus of the class was. So that actually became really helpful in the grading process for me as a faculty member, because it let me get feedback from my students and know that if they, you know, really thought that one piece of criteria was off somehow, then we could go ahead and fix it before all the grading had already happened and it could turn into a challenge of a grade. So that was really helpful, I thought, always. Okay, next question, and I really wish we had enough time to return back to that team-based learning question, but to the viewer who is asking the question about team-based learning, I'll make sure that we follow up after the webinar. I just don't think we have enough time to cover the full scope of what you're asking. But the final question we can go to, and they actually asked it to Examsoft, but I'll give it to Jayzona just because I feel more than confident that she can answer this. Is the character limit for graders in the comments section set, or is that something that can be configured?
I don't think it's set. I think we've had a lot of faculty who've written a lot. I don't know.
um, I don't believe that it's set either. I know some schools that are using our rubrics are even going so far as to using Siri on their iPads to write in comments. And so instead of actually sitting there and typing out the comments back to the students, they'll just do the double click on the home button on the iPad and then speak their comments in. And they can write paragraphs and paragraphs sometimes,
Yeah.
just depending on what the nature of the beast is at the time. So to my knowledge, it's not set either.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay, well, that team-based learning question is a very valuable one, and I would really like to get to it, but with 3 minutes, I just worry about our time to actually cover the full scope of it. So again, to the viewer who is asking this, I'll be sure that we follow up with you. Um, and yeah, so I guess everybody, thanks for joining us for today's webinar, and thank you, Jayzona, so much for giving this webinar. I feel like it's been really good. And
Thank
we had a
you.
great attendance turnout, so that's good also. And I hope everybody has good days.
Thanks, you too.
Signing out now. Thanks.